We all know the picture, right? Snow on the ground, a cold winter's night, a baby in a manger. The story of Christmas on December 25th is probably one of the most famous scenes in the entire world. But what if the clues to when it really happened have been hiding in plain sight this whole time? Let's get into it. Now, before we jump in, I want to be clear that this analysis is based on some really deep research. It comes from a compilation of authentic biblical and historical sources put together by engineer Abdul Rahman Mahmood. So we're really just exploring the findings from his work.
So, here's the big question we're tackling. Pretty much the whole world has a date set in stone for Christmas. But does the biblical story, the original account, actually back that up? Or does it maybe paint a picture of a completely different time of year?
All right, our first major clue comes from a part of the story everybody knows, the shepherds. The text says they were living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Now that little detail, living out in the fields, that's actually huge.
Okay, so let's just think about this practically. A winter night in Judea is cold. It's the rainy season. It's really, really unlikely that shepherds would have their entire flocks out in the open fields overnight. They'd be sheltered. But an autumn night, well, that's a different story. The weather's milder, it's after the harvest, and that fits perfectly with shepherds and their flocks still being out in the pastures. And this isn't just one interpretation, you know? The research shows that a bunch of different sources, we're talking church organizations, well-known Bible commentaries, they all look at this agricultural reality and come to the very same conclusion.
I mean, listen to the famous theologian Adam Clarke. He basically says the available evidence points squarely to an autumn birth. So this one clue, just thinking about the shepherds, is already a massive piece of the puzzle.
So let's build on that with our second clue, the Roman census. You remember the story starts with Joseph and Mary traveling to Bethlehem because Caesar Augustus ordered a census that everyone had to be registered.
So let's put on our Roman administrator hats for a second. The whole point of a census is for taxation. You need literally everyone to travel, sometimes for days, to get to their hometown. Would you seriously order this massive migration in the middle of winter when the roads are a mess and travel is at its worst? No way. It makes so much more sense to do it after the harvest, in the autumn, when it's easier for everyone to get around.
And just like with the shepherds, there's a real consensus here in the research. Multiple sources point out that, from a purely practical standpoint, a winter census just doesn't add up.
This brings us to clue number 3, and it tackles that other famous detail. Why was there no room for them in the inn? Was it just the census clogging things up, or was there something else going on? And here's the missing piece of context. The autumn, around September and October, was a huge season for major religious festivals in Judea. This meant enormous crowds of people were already traveling to the Jerusalem area, and that includes Bethlehem, which is right next door.
So that whole no room at the inn thing, suddenly it makes perfect sense. The research suggests the inns weren't just full because of the census. The city was likely already overflowing with visitors for the autumn festivals. It's a much better explanation for why every single bed was taken.
Okay, so we've got 3 really distinct clues now. The shepherds in the fields, the logic of the census, and the festival crowds. Let's put them all together and see what kind of picture emerges.
When you lay it all out like this, the pattern is, well, it's pretty hard to ignore. The shepherds being out at night points to a milder time of year, roughly April to October. The census makes the most sense in the autumn, after the harvest, and the packed inns line up perfectly with the autumn festival season. All 3 clues point away from winter and straight towards autumn.
So, the conclusion that all this compiled research leads to is a much more plausible time frame for the Nativity sometime in late September or early October, not the dead of winter in late December.
And what's really fascinating about this is we're not using some outside source to challenge the story. It's the opposite. The research shows the clues are right there, inside the biblical narrative itself. You just have to look at them through the lens of what life was actually like back then. Which, of course, leaves us with one final, huge question. If the evidence inside the story itself points so clearly to an autumn birth, then how on earth did December 25th become the date celebrated all around the world? But that is probably a story for another time.